What are the risks of violence in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo spreading regionally? M23 rebels have taken control of the provincial capital. The president has promised a vigorous response. So, what role do neighbouring countries play? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Elizabeth Puranam. M23 rebels in the Democratic Republic of Congo have taken control of the eastern city of Goma. Several international aid groups have raised the alarm about the humanitarian situation, with the UN warning of mass displacement, food shortages and overburdened hospitals. Since re-emerging just over 3 years ago, the Rwanda-backed group has advanced steadily through the eastern DRC, seizing towns and villages and forcing people from their homes. M23 is just one of hundreds of rebel groups in the country and has been fighting the army for years. But the latest escalation could mark a major shift with serious implications for regional stability. We'll go to our panel in just a few moments, but first, Fintan Monaghan has this report.
Army uniforms and military equipment belonging to soldiers from the Democratic Republic of Congo, abandoned on the streets of Goma. Signs of a rushed retreat as M23 rebels, supported by Rwandan troops, advanced on the city. Foreign military contractors were supposed to boost the DRC's defences. Now, many have been captured, taken across the border into Rwanda.
We will let them go. We have told them if they even try to come back to a different part of Congo, we will get them and they will regret it.
Many Congolese soldiers were also captured. They've been battling the M23 rebels for more than a decade. The DRC says the group is trying to seize control of mineral resources. But Rwanda says the rebels are trying to protect the ethnic Tutsi population in eastern DRC. M23 is made up of Tutsi fighters who broke away from the Congolese army in 2012. The group is backed by Rwanda, which in turn has enjoyed decades of military support from the West. The DRC's army is outmatched, but the president says it will retaliate.
A vigorous coordinated response against these terrorists and their sponsors is underway. Our valiant armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo, symbols of courage and patriotism, are fully mobilized, ready to defend every inch of our territory.
International attempts to stop the fighting have been unsuccessful. Representatives of the DRC and Rwanda have met at the UN. However, a meeting of the two presidents, meant to be held in Kenya this week, was cancelled. Regional groups have also been pushing for peace, but so far, diplomacy has failed. Meanwhile, the people of Goma are suffering. The UN says water and electricity supplies have been cut off.
We've only been able to come out because the guns have gone silent. We had to come out to find some water. In many homes, food is finished, water is finished.
M23 rebels took control of Goma in 2012, but were forced to retreat the following year. This time, they may prove more difficult to push out. And there are concerns that the intensifying conflict in eastern DRC could cause instability across the Great Lakes region. Fintan Monaghan, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Well, let's bring in our guests. Vava Tampa is the founder and chief campaigner of Save the Congo, a grassroots campaign group working to end the conflicts and humanitarian crisis in the DRC. He joins us from London. Richard Moncrieff is the project director for the Great Lakes region at the International Crisis Group. He's joining us from Lille in France. And Kambale Musavuli is an analyst at the Centre for Research on the Congo, Kinshasa. He joins us from the Ghanaian capital, Accra. A very warm welcome to all of you. Richard, I'll start with you in Lille. This is not the first time that M23 has seized the strategic city of Goma. What's different this time to 2012?
Well, the scope of the whole thing is far greater than 2012 and 2013. So that's the first difference. Not only have the M23 and the Rwandan army seized Goma, they're now pushing south into South Kivu. They've seized vast areas of North Kivu, and they've been doing so for the last 3 years. So I think actually, and very worryingly, the context is much more comparable to the civil wars of the 1990s, where we saw the fighting spread from North Kivu across the whole of the Congo, with the involvement of neighbouring countries. So we're firstly and foremost at the much greater scale than we were in 2012 and 13, unfortunately. I think also, there's changes in the international context as well. I think that the M23's backers in Kigali reckoned that the international diplomats who in 2013 slapped them across the wrist are rather distracted by other issues at the moment. And they've made that calculation for 3 years now. And I think they've been so far largely proven correct as they've expanded into the Congo with fairly few consequences on the Rwandan side.
Well, before we get to efforts to de-escalate the situation, I want to talk more about why this fighting has resurfaced once again. Vava, why is this region so important to the M23? Is it about defending, ethnic Tutsis and their interests, or is it about the vast mineral wealth there?
It's all about the vast mineral wealth that Congo has. There isn't any threat to any Tutsi group in Congo. I've always sort of said I challenge anyone to bring us any evidence of any attack against any Tutsi group in Congo by the Congolese army or the Congolese police force over the past 12 months or 12 years. There isn't. There isn't an ethnic issue in Congo. Congo is made up of some 500 ethnic groups. All of us are minority groups. There isn't a single group that is dominating over other people. The dynamics that we have in Rwanda does not exist in Congo. So all of this, it's about natural resources. And what is really critical for your viewers to understand is that the M23 could not have killed, raped, abused, displaced as many people as they have done without the direct support from Kigali. And similarly, without support, money coming from London, from the US, from Canada, from Germany and other EU countries, Paul Kagame could not have continued to sow and wreak so much crisis and violence in Congo. And the question is, what is the UK, what is the US and Canada getting in return for funding and fueling and enabling Paul Kagame's violence in Congo?
And Kambale, it is Kigali's role in the DRC and its support for M23 that is such a big focus of this conflict. Do you agree with Vava that for the M23 and even for Rwanda, this is not about protecting ethnic Tutsis, that this is about the vast mineral wealth? And what do you make of, when Rwanda says that their actions in the DRC are defensive because they are taking action against Hutus that attack Tutsis on both sides of the border, Hutu militias that Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, says, is a threat to his government in Rwanda?
So let's look at the fact. The M23 started an attack in 2021 as they took over a few towns and controlled the town of Bunagana and moved forward to take a few more towns. They took over Rubaya. In Rubaya, there is a mine, the Rubaya mine. The Rubaya mine is the largest coltan reserve in the world. Coltan is a mineral resource used in an electronic device. According to the UN group of experts, their control of that mine has generated $800,000 a month in taxation. And these minerals are transiting into Kigali. When we have such fact, and then the evidence is presented to the Security Council, how can one say that their claim is to protect a minority group in the Congo? Are they protecting mine workers in the coltan mine? So we do know that the reasoning or the justification that Rwanda may provide, that the M23 may provide, their actions does not show that this is what they are in the DRC. We know it's about control of the land and the resources.
Richard, do you agree with that? The M23 has accused the Congolese government of not living up to the 2009 peace deal and fully integrating Congolese Tutsis into the army and the administration. Do they have a legitimate grievance?
Yeah, I largely agree with the other guests. I'm sorry, that's not great for the debate, is it? But no, I think the other two guests are largely right. When you look at Rwandan and M23 justifications for their actions, it looks very much like the arsonist firefighter. There's an expression that's more common in French than in English, the pompier pyromane. which is someone who lights fires and then comes along with a great big hose and says, here, I can put them out. To address this question of Tutsis, as one of your guests says, there are many thousands, or many hundreds at least, of minority groups in the Congo. Perhaps some of them are under some pressure at different times. But what's very important to point out is that the actions of the M23 over the last 3 years has made the position of Congolese Tutsis more difficult. And that's very important, I think, to point out. The question of Rwanda taking defensive measures, well, defense against what? Because the Rwandans have been in the DR Congo supporting the M23 since beginning of 2022, when the M23 emerged, or at least this round of the M23. There's a much longer history to this, by the way. And at that time, the FDLR, which is this nasty Hutu group operating in North Kivu, was at a low ebb. A couple of years before that, joint operations between the Rwandan and the Congolese army had succeeded in actually killing the leader of the FDLR. So the idea that they then had to invade the DRC in 2021-22 to tamp down on the FDLR simply makes no sense. It simply doesn't fit with the facts on the ground.
Okay, so it sounds like all of you are saying whatever threat the Hutu militias that are in the DRC might be posing to Rwanda, it doesn't justify the Rwandan actions in the country. But given that they now control the biggest city in eastern DRC with its vast mineral wealth, and that they say that they are going to neighboring South Kivu province, Congolese President Vava, let me come to you. The Congolese President, Felix Tshisekedi, has said that he's going to respond vigorously. But given just how quickly Goma fell to the rebels who now control it, what are the prospects of the Congolese army retaking Goma by force?
Look, we've always known that the M23 and the RDF are going to move from Goma to Bukavu. This is not a great revelation to any Congolese person. It was expected. And what I'm expecting, what the Congolese people are asking, and to the Congolese government, including Felix Tshisekedi, is quite simple. The time is now to create an international criminal tribunal for Congo. One thing we know, we have tried every single thing. We have tried peace deals, we have tried elections, we have tried to sort of bring all the different militia gangs into the Congolese army. They have not worked. They have not provided Congolese people any form of justice or security. What we want to moving forward is to have more UN lawyers rather than UN troops. We need an international criminal tribunal for Congo to end the near total cult of impunity, which is fueling and enabling people like Paul Kagame to continue to fund and fuel and abate violence in Congo.
Yeah, we know that MONUSCO, which is the UN's peacekeeping force in the DRC, is one of the biggest UN peacekeeping forces, and yet it hasn't been able to stop the fall of Goma to M23 rebels. But when you talk about, international criminal tribunals, these things take so much time, and M23 rebels are on the offensive, they are on the move, they are threatening to go into South Kivu. Kambale, can you see them and Rwanda, M23 rebels and Rwanda, facing the kind of African, international, the massive pressure they faced last time?
It is possible. I was reading this morning that Germany is reconsidering its financial support to Rwanda. And we know in 2012 who was able to rein in M23, when the United States revealed a little bit of aid to Rwanda. It wasn't even much. It was $200,000 only of a training that they were supposed to do with Rwandan officers. U.S. taking that action allowed all the European nations to follow suit. So then you had Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Netherlands, you had the World Bank, you had the African Development Bank withholding aid to Rwanda. That single action of nation backing Rwanda, supporting Rwanda financially, made Rwanda stop supporting the M23, and they disappeared for almost a decade. So we know what works. International pressure works when it is applied on an aggressor nation. And that would give the space for Congolese to deal with whatever issue that's taking place. But what is fascinating is that we're not seeing the same level of pressure in 2025 as it relates to Rwanda's action. We're seeing the usual condemnation. We're seeing statements where they will say Rwanda should withdraw their soldiers from the Congo. These statements are not sufficient.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you're saying we're
M23
not seeing the same level of pressure because, as Richard said earlier, this is much more serious than what we've seen in the past. He said that it's reminiscent of, the beginning of the Congolese civil wars in the late 90s and early 2000s that resulted in the deaths of more than 5 million people. Before talking about more of the efforts to try and de-escalate the situation, Richard, how much territory do you think the M23 has its sights set on?
Well, that's the question on everyone's lips, is how far will Kigali and the M23 go? I'd just like to address a couple of points that your other guests made and you made earlier. I agree entirely that maximum pressure on Kigali is absolutely necessary at this point to pull us back from a very precarious and worrying situation as the M23 and Rwandans push into South Kivu, put an awful lot of pressure on the Burundians. The Burundian government is already in a very fragile state with a floundering economy and so forth. We really are in a very, very difficult situation, and maximum pressure on Rwanda is clearly a very necessary part of the equation. However, I have to say that we have to look at the other side, and we have to note that while morally and in terms of international law, we can very much sympathize with Kinshasa and with the Congolese government, they have shown such weakness on the ground. They have been militarily unable to stop the invasion of their country. And that is, of course, a very difficult thing for them to accept. And President Tshisekedi, not surprisingly, last night went on television and talked about continuing the war against Rwanda, despite the fact that his army had, although they put up some resistance, effectively, when it came to defending Goma town itself, they more or less melted away. So we've got a real dilemma between the morality here where, I would agree that the Congo has been the victim of aggression, but at the same time, the stronger party is imposing facts on the ground, which will then necessarily feed into negotiating positions and will influence the international diplomats who are trying to sort this out. I mean, in the short term, to try to stop a civil war. Your other guests have raised the question of international tribunals, but as you mentioned, that's not something you set up in a few weeks. Whereas at the moment, we really have the question in front of us and in front of international diplomats, whether African or Western, of stopping a regional war here. And I don't think that's alarmist or exaggerated.
And Vava, in the meantime, M23 has merged with 17 political parties, several armed groups to form the Congo River Alliance. It's led by a former election commission chief who's from interestingly, from Western DRC. I mean, how much of a growing threat is this alliance to the Congolese government? They seem to have national aspirations here, even of overthrowing the Congolese government.
Well, look, there isn't such thing as the M23. We need to be completely frank. What the Congolese people are facing is the RDF. This is the Rwandan army. Corneille Nangaa and everyone else behind him, those are puppets fighting on behalf of Paul Kagame. While I accept Richard's point, and this is absolutely factual and is an open secret, that Felix Tshisekedi, the Congolese president, is completely incompetent. He has failed to rise to the challenge. He has failed to, pay soldiers accordingly. He has failed to create a modern army. He has failed to do so many things. But we must also remember that the Congolese government, the Congolese army, the Congolese people are fighting against a country that receives $1 billion every single year from the West. In 2021, when M23 re-emerged, when Paul Kagame began funding and sending soldiers in Congo to kill, to rape, to displace people, the international community, the West, gave Paul Kagame 1 billion. Another 1 billion was given in 2022, another 1 billion in 2023, another 1 billion in 2024. And in 2025, he would also receive another 1 billion. You cannot fight against someone who is receiving so much support, so much training, so much guns from the West, and also being protected from the West from accountability. Richard talked about, International Criminal Tribunal for Congo taking so long. But how long did it take us to indict Vladimir Putin in Russia for killing white people in Ukraine? Somehow, when it comes to black people being killed, when it comes to brown people being killed, the international justice system takes longer. But when it's white lives which are in danger, somehow we found a way to indict Vladimir Putin in Russia and some of his people in less than a year. That is racism within the international community.
Kambale, as Vava has pointed out, there has been billions of dollars that have gone to Rwanda, a lot of it from Western nations. Rwanda is the strongest military in the region, and we have to talk about it's not the only country, of course, that's involved in the DRC. Richard has been talking about, troops from Burundi, and in fact, we have Burundian government troops that are supporting the Congolese army, and they are fighting Burundian rebels in South Kivu province on the border with Burundi. Talk to us about the real danger of this conflict spilling over the DRC's many borders.
The different troops who are there are there for different mandates. We have South Africa, Malawi, we have Tanzania, who are there part of the mission of the United Nations and also the mission of SADC. I think Burundi is there for the same thing and for its own security. And the context of what we are talking about with the invasions of Rwanda, even though we have spent a lot of time talking about Rwanda, is that we cannot talk about Rwanda without Uganda. And what pains me is that most people who may be watching this may not be able to take the time to read the 160-page report from the United Nations group of experts. But when you open the UN group of experts, you understand why we are all almost sounding the same, right? There is a superb military using drones, using Albert Systems weapon. These are the evidence that the UN group of experts are presenting.
Yeah, Richard, I want to put this question to Richard because we only have about 5 minutes left in the program. Richard, both Rwanda and Uganda have had a history of military interventions in the DRC. They fought in the first Congolese War on the same side and the second Congolese War supporting rival groups. Do we know what the relationship between those two countries is now and how that might affect the M23 and its advances?
Hear me, all that in 5 minutes. We need a whole other program.
And you don't get the whole 5 minutes.
Okay, good. I shouldn't be the last to speak. That's what I was just going to say. Uganda-Rwanda relations are very fluctuating, but at the moment we see some very worrying signs of very senior people in Uganda, including the son of the president, making some noises in support of the M23 and Rwandan invasion of North Kivu, and that should worry us all.
All right. Vava, can the political, the social, the economic issues that have fueled the instability in the DRC for so long, how can they be solved? Is a military solution, can that be part of the solution?
No, peace begins with justice. Without justice, Congo is not going to see any peace. And that justice would only be served in the form of an international criminal tribunal for Congo. That needs to be done. At the moment, though, my mind, my heart, my prayers are really with the people of North Kivu and South Kivu. As we are speaking, one of the biggest hospitals in Congo, Panzi Hospital in Bukavu, staff are receiving threat from RDF soldiers and M23 soldiers essentially threatening to attack them. And if that is allowed to go on by the UK, by the US, by the Germans and Canadian who are funding Paul Kagame's violence, then we are going to see a catastrophe in that part of the world as well. So it's really, really critical that those people who are enabling Paul Kagame, pull him back. and that they stop the aid, and that they stop the military support, that they stop the military training that Kagame is currently receiving in order to force him out of Congo. Without support from the West, Kagame's troops will not stand a chance against the Congolese people, against the Congolese army. It's only the Western support that's making a difference.
And Kambale, can the US, the EU, the UN, who are all calling for a ceasefire, the Kenyan and Angolan presidents who've been, leading processes on the DRC and who have been calling for a return to negotiations without any conditions, do you see this coming to fruition at all?
It will only come to fruition if there is pressure from American people or citizens of these countries. They need to be aware of what is actually happening. But in terms of action that need to take place, it's very direct. They need to be sanctioned on Rwanda, a withholding of aid to Rwanda. In the case of the United States, it's not even a moral appeal. It's a legal appeal. Public Law 109-456, Section 105, calls on the Secretary of State Rubio today to withhold aid to any nation destabilizing the Congo. So that's one thing. The second thing that needs to happen is that the identified commanders of the Rwandan Defense Force who are participating in supporting the M23 need to also have targeted sanction. And last is the weapons, right? The sophisticated weapon being used, they need to be a track down on manufacturers who are providing these weaponry, those systems jamming, GPS systems of planes and so on. So following up with the weapon manufacturers providing the military support to Rwanda and then being used in the DRC will be important. And the rest for internal issues of the Congo, it is up to the Congolese to rise up to the occasion. The Congolese president has spoken. The Congolese people know that they have been fighting since 1996 to reclaim dignity, to reclaim their country, to have peace and stability. They will be successful. International actors have to play their role, while Congolese are also fighting on the inside to stabilize their country.
All right, that is our discussion for today. Thank you to all of you for this very important and interesting discussion. That is Vava Tampa in London, Richard Moncrieff in Lille, and Kambale Musavuli in Accra. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, do go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Elizabeth Puranam, and the whole team here, bye for now.